surprisingly also that he's chosen this moment in his career to make that change.
We've got a Jordan off. That's Fisichella. Yeah, Giancarlo Fisichella is off. That's on the outside of the Estoril turn. The fast right hand. Look at the left rear. It's completely taken off. And we'll have to take another look. Hopefully we'll get a replay. Red flags are out. The clock stops. 20 minutes still to go in free practice here at Manicourt. And we have the first major incident of the weekend so far. And concern down there in the Jordan pit as Fisichella does clamber out. Out he comes, and he's okay, which is fine. But let's just wait and see what happens. A slow-moving Michael Schumacher going past just to see what's happened. And the main thing is he's okay. But that's a bit of a blow to Jordan's hopes as they try and get ready for qualifying.
Yep, Sato went off there yesterday, and it is a very fast part of the circuit, obviously. Let's hope he's okay, because, well, he looks fine, but, you know, that is a very quick part. As we say, it's flat out going into...
Let's take a look. Here we go. And we'll have another look here at what's happened through the right-hander. And is he just going to run too wide? He puts the wheel over the curb. No, his bits come off. The front wing came off. The front wing came off as he went over the curb. And then, of course, with no front grip, the car just ran wide. Oh, that is a nasty accident. Big, big impact. And they are travelling at very high speeds on the exit of that corner, some 160, 170 miles an hour. And the thing just... Now, let's take a look here. He comes out over the curb, bobbles that front wing. Now, you would not expect that. He didn't hit the curb that hard to expect. And, of course, it lifts the front end off the tarmac completely. It wedges underneath the chassis. And that is very worrying indeed. Brings back memories of losing wings earlier this year from other teams. But it's the first time we've seen that on a Jordan. And Gary Anderson... and Eddie Jordan himself will be very, very concerned to have seen that. That is a big worry, and luckily, hopefully, he's okay. We can see Eddie is talking to Gary right now, and but that was a fast move. Villeneuve went off there in qualifying, I think, a few years ago, and it's a very fast section to go off, and as you saw there, no loss of speed when he hit into those tyres. He was still going flat out. That's one of the most frightening type of accidents for a driver. No control at all. Seemed to have it all his way, but it didn't work that way. He's now in the back there with Sid Watkins, who will bring him back to the medical centre and just make sure that everything is okay. But Fisichella looking a little bit shaken, I have to say. He's usually looking pretty relaxed. But that was a big, big accident. Not missing any angles. No, that's right. We've got cameras wherever you want them. Absolutely. Doesn't matter where you need your camera. We are right there with you. I'm going to say that they're not going slow. Poor old Fizz hanging on there. It's not easy at the back of the Mercedes, is it? Sid's got a bit more ballast so he can hang on. In the back of the medical car, being brought back to the pits. And he's got a smile on his face now as they're heading on around. Look at the mess that is the Jordan as it's pulled out of the tyres. It's completely wiped out the left-hand side, ripped the side pod off, the front end obviously as well. Again, testament to the strength of these cars now. And, you know, the crash testing that these chassis have to go through, that sort of accident, a perfect example of how the cars then stand up to that impact. Well, also now we have to start thinking about qualifying and Jordan's thoughts for that in terms of how they're going to get set up for that. Obviously, we know that they're going to put these new engines in, but will they have enough time, I would have thought, to get sorted? I would have thought so. Yeah, I would imagine they will. Of course, they've got the spare car, but he's not allowed to run that in this session, but he would be allowed to run it in the qualifying session. But at the moment, we believe the spare car is set up for Takuma Sato, so that's going to give the guys a little bit of work to do in terms of preparing it for the Italian instead. I can't see him running the rest. He's got to obviously have a medical checkup, and so I can't see him running the rest of the 20 minutes of this session. But I would have thought it wouldn't be very hard to set up the spare car for him instead. So he's back to the medical centre. They'll check him over and make sure he's okay after that very heavy impact. Some concern from the Jordan engineers. He says, gives a quick wave. I'm okay, no problem. It's the car that you've got to worry about. And, well, they're already on to that. They're already getting the spare car prepared for him for later on. Take another look at this. And the speed he's carrying through here. You can see how the car's tracking through, neat and tidy. Just taps, he runs over the curb, and then it just comes straight off. But that's not a heavy curb, that one. It's not a really severe curb. Bang! Into the tyres. I just wonder whether he's made contact anywhere else with that front wing, or... Very difficult. They do run the cars very low here at Manicourt because it is a smooth track, and then it just didn't seem to touch the curb. Did it?
It just broke. Definitely. Well, I don't think there was anything to do with the curb there. I mean, as I said, it's a smooth one, and as you said, they are running them low because it's a smooth track. But that seemed to break on its own volition then.
It did. And then look, it's still wedged under there.
And that's the scary part, is this bit here.
Look at the impact there. I mean, the tyre, he's almost at the end of that tyre barrier, but I have to say the tyre barrier actually did a fantastic job of absorbing the energy. But look how a bit further on there wouldn't have been a tyre barrier. So, you know, that was certainly the right place to hit. If you're going to have to hit anywhere, he managed to hit just at the right place. And it wouldn't surprise me if they don't add a few more tyres along that stretch. Having seen that accident, seeing what's possible, might be worth a few more along there.
Well, it's been a tough weekend for Eddie so far. Grilled by Watty yesterday, and now having to sort out his own cars.
Yes, that's right. Yes, certainly Watty gave him a hard time about what engines they'll be using next year. Peter Winter told us that he's gathered they may well have done a deal with Toyota, not for next year, but for the year after, to have an engine supply. That's yet to be confirmed, and Eddie certainly wasn't going to give anything away. And here comes Charlie Whiting now to have a look at that area. They've announced that the session will restart once the tyre barrier has been repaired, but of course there's quite a lot of tyres got moved around there, and Charlie just checking to see how long it's going to take them to get the track back in order again.
Well, in a weird way, I suppose, with the temperatures going up, some of the other drivers will probably be quite grateful for the fact that they've got a little bit more time in this session left. Temperatures going up, but obviously the concern is safety right now with Charlie, and making sure that tyre wall is put back securely, because it could happen again.
Yeah.
And that's been a fair impact, and I tell you what, brave cameraman too, credit to him.
Absolutely, yes, look where he is, right on where that car went in, basically. So that must have been a fairly frightening moment as a Formula 1 car approached him at such high speed. But they've just got to get this all sorted out and then get the session underway again. But I have to say, good tyre barrier, 2 rows of tyres, as you can see, and good height to it as well, and it absorbed a lot of that impact that Fisichella suffered on the exit of the Estoril turn. So, as we say, first real major incident. We've seen lots of spins, lots of incidents, lots of people using the revised tarmac runoff areas. First time that we've seen somebody actually into the tyre barrier this weekend. There's his teammate Takuma Sato. Of course, they will be concerned down there in the Jordan pit now. What is happening with the front wings? Will they have to take all the front wings and have a close look at them? Well, they're not having a particularly close look at that one.
Yeah, and I haven't read anything about them making any modifications necessarily to that part of the car recently, and it just seemed very odd.
Well, the front wing has been on that car, we think, for about 3 races, so you know they've had mileage, they've had experience of it. They would have been checking them over the last few Grand Prix, but you just never know. Stresses and strains on a Formula 1 car, you can't always predict them. And it is quite possible that he might have just touched hit something or clipped a curb somewhere else. That's often the way something gets weakened, and then of course it breaks later on the lap. And
as you say, you know, 3 races, and that's the lowest they've run it, so maybe that could be an indication too.
Well, I'm sure they're working on that. Meanwhile, we're in the Arrows pit once again. I do feel sorry for those boys. They're doing a good job of keeping spirits up. You can see them laughing and joking, the Arrows mechanics. But at the moment, still no action. Now, Peter has made his way to the Jordan pit, and we'll see if you can learn anything. Peter.
Well, not really, Ben. No, just looking around. Relative calm here, I have to say. There is a fairly complicated sort of front suspension strut layout on the front of the Jordan. No reason to think that in any way it's dangerous to see the front wings here. It's just possible, of course, that he might have touched a curb somewhere else and dislodged something before he got into that corner. We'll know more about that in due course, I would guess. Just talking about the engine situation and Watty yesterday giving Eddie Jordan a hard time. It turns out that I think the one question Watty didn't ask him was whether they might be running Ford engines next year, because I think the latest news is that Jordan may well be running a Cosworth engine, but it'll be badged to Ford as distinct from a Cosworth, and I think we need to get Watty to ask Eddie that question tomorrow.
Well, we can wind him up for that one, Peter. That would be good fun. But do you think that, if that's the case, do you still think that Eddie's done a deal for the following year for Toyota?
I do, yes. I was chatting yesterday to Ove Anderson asking about Toyota's policy for supplying 2 teams in 2004, and he said, well, it's early days, but there is an advantage to that because you can start to get more information, you can judge your own performance, and he was certainly not saying it's going to happen, but equally he wasn't denying it, which in Formula 1 speak usually means it is going to happen, I think.
So we'll watch that space. It's an interesting one, but that is interesting about the Ford engine as well, because I'd read somewhere else, I think just this week, that Nicky was saying, well, if they do get a Cosworth engine, it won't be branded Ford. So that is a different story, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes, and I think, as I say, we ought to sit back and enjoy Watty and Eddie Jordan tomorrow.
Right, we'll wind him up. We'll get him ready for that one, and tomorrow we'll get John to come in hard on EJ if he's up for it. Well, there's still work going on the back part of the track as they continue the repairs to the tyre barrier, and they're saying it's going to take about 10 minutes to repair this tyre wall. That doesn't surprise me. It is a fairly complicated job, just making sure they've got everything they require there, and of course it's got to be back to full spec. They can't make it anything less. There we can see replays actually of the crane there just taking out a whole section of tyres. They've got a pretty good system here, binding together a bunch of tyres so they can take out sections and replace them fairly quickly. So it's a good effort from the people here at Manicourt to get this session up and running as quickly as possible.
And it is funny, isn't it? You know, the technology involved in this sport and has increased safety since '94, etc., has gone forward leaps and bounds, but still good old-fashioned rubber tyres still being used to great effect.
Yeah, and they work, don't they? I mean, that's the interesting thing. The FIA has looked into other areas, other ways of providing absorption from barriers, and so that they do have some effect, but they've stuck with the tyre barriers for the moment. In America, other things have been tried as well, and they are adopting them in some cases in the States. But for the moment, as you say, the tyre barrier seems to do as good a job as anything. It's cheap as well, it's effective, so until you come up with something that's markedly better, then you might as well stay with it.
So frantic work going on in the Jordan pits, but I wouldn't say there's any too much major concern of the breakage. It looks as though it's business as usual. We saw Eddie talking to Gary Anderson, obviously about what happened. Still can't work it out myself, but I don't think they're going to... Well, it doesn't look at the moment as though they're going to be too concerned about it.
No, I think we're going to have to wait for later on today. They no doubt will look into the whole situation and to be able to report back as to what they thought happened. The important thing is to get the spare car ready for Fisichella for qualifying. As you say, it's very unlikely he'll be out in the remainder of this session, but I'm sure he'll be ready to qualify come 1 o'clock. His car now being taken away. Very, very second-hand looking Jordan. Fissi's going through a bit of a tough time at the moment. He had a great run of 5th place finishes going, and then that accident with Sato at the Nürburgring. Disappointing run last time at Silverstone, didn't really come together for him there, and now this accident. It's just not a good mid-season for the Italian. Ralf Schumacher in conversation there with Sam Michael at Williams as they continue to work on their setup for qualifying this afternoon.
Yeah, Fissi 8th in the championship at the moment, and as we look ahead to the rest of the year, obviously Michael's going to wrap it up either this weekend or probably in Germany. And now I suppose the battle is on for the runners-up spot, and that still is very much wide open.
Yes, that's right. Barrichello looking as though he might well be able to take that runners-up spot, but we've got a good battle going on between him and the likes of Ralf Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya. There are all the bits being gathered, and there are plenty of them. Carbon fibre bits and pieces, so the side pod's been ripped apart there. But you can see the monocoque itself, just behind the brake master cylinders, completely unaffected, so hence Fisichella was able to jump out of the car with no injuries at all, and that's again testament to the strength of those monocoque chassis. As Charlie Whiting still checking the watch and hoping that they can get this session restarted. Still those 20 minutes to be run in second free practice.
Yeah, Jordan fans eyeing that up for Eddie's next garage sale, which I'm sure will be as always.
Yep, there'll be some useful little mementos there. But Fisichella would be only too happy if that hadn't occurred, of course, but he's just got to get on with it now, and they're getting those tyres sorted out fairly quickly. Good system to replace them. They're all bound together now. They've got the rubber outer barrier as well, and they're all bound together so that they don't disintegrate or come apart when the car goes into them. There again,
and it dissipates the impact as well.
Yeah, dissipating the impact, but nowadays, of course, the tyres don't go rolling all over the track, which is what used to happen when they didn't bind them together in the same way. So it's much, much safer now, absorbing the energy but staying in position and not affecting other cars that might be on track.
I'd be interested to look at the telemetry and see just how fast he was going when he actually hit those tyres.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be feeding that information out a little bit later on. Meanwhile, Felipe Massa little bit frustrated. It's a bit of a tough time this for the drivers, where they know they're still got work to do. They need to come out for another 20 minutes or so, and it also means there's going to be less time for the teams prepared for qualifying this afternoon. And for those teams that are changing engines, then they may well decide not to come out in the remainder, because they may just need that time to get those engine changes made.
Less time for the teams, but what about Arrows? More time for them, possibly, to actually get out on the track. That's still a no-show so far. The quiver, but no Arrows.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great shame, isn't it? Frentzen and Bernaldi, still no sign of them making their way onto the track. There's Michael Schumacher. He looks as though he will be coming out for the last part of the session. Relaxed and easy, with Jean Todt being introduced to some important people, no doubt. Todt, who made his start with the Ferrari team back in 1993 here at Manicourt. Look at those tyre marks, they're pretty impressive.
Yeah, pretty much a straight line, as we said, and there was just nothing. He was a passenger as soon as that front wing went underneath him, and a very frightening moment for any driver, especially when they lose control like that, because there's just nothing they can do. No,
that's right, and with the front wheels jacked off the ground with the wing underneath, he was on a very high-speed skateboard virtually, wasn't he? Well, even worse than a skateboard. No brakes at all on the front wheels. It was just the rear wheels that were doing the braking effectively, and that wasn't going to take much speed off. But even in those moments, as a driver, you've got to remember certain things, like where your hands go, whether to take your hands off the wheel, etc., because that's when you can injure yourself badly. If you know the impact's coming, and obviously he did at that point, he had enough time, whether it was just over a second or not, it was still enough to realise that there was going to be a heavy impact, and it looks as though he took the right precautions, because he looks okay. Well, there he is, Bernie Ecclestone, making his way down the back of the paddock, keeping his eye on everything that's happening in Formula One. And, well, he'll be pleased to see how the track has reacted to this. Got the car out of the way very quickly. They've replaced the tyre barriers effectively. And it should be a fairly smooth restart in just a few minutes' time now for this last 20 minutes of the free practice session. And this is the time that we would expect them to be putting in some simulated qualifying runs and to see some pretty rapid times being set, as long as they feel they've got the time between sessions still to prepare the cars for qualifying. Spare car in the middle there of the Williams garage, not used yet. They're not allowed to use it until we get into qualifying. And still Sam Michael and Ralph having a detailed conversation. They really are discussing things a lot here today. Ralph, of course, was pole sitter here last year, but it looks as though they might have to do some work if they're going to achieve that again. And that crash has actually given the rest of the teams a lot of a chance to really rethink anything that they might have wanted to do in the rest of that session. Obviously they've got a little bit longer now to think about it, but I just heard that Nick Damon is down talking to Gary Anderson of Jordan. Let's find out what happened.
Gary Anderson, good news, looks like Giancarlo's okay, but what happened? We saw the wing fall off, but why?
Obviously we don't know yet. We'll have to have a look when we get back, but there's a lot of quite high curves here, and obviously there's a few excursions across those fast chicanes that doesn't do any good. But we keep inspecting every time, and it looked okay before we went out in that run. So we just have to wait and have a look, really.
Is this the same wing as you've been running for months, or a new design?
No, it's the same since this wing came out. I mean, it's been around since Austria, I think. So, yeah, it's done a few miles. So it's a bit strange. But, again, as I say, this place is fairly daunting when we hit the curbs.
A lot of work on the spare car. I take it you're going to put in a qualifying engine. Is he doing engine change?
Yeah, we've got a slightly better spec for qualifying and the race, really. So we're putting that into the spare car now. This one looks as though it's a dustbin job. But we'll have to see when we come back, because we've only got 3 cars here, and see if we can resurrect it for tomorrow.
Okay, thanks very much.
So logistics going to be a little bit difficult for Jordan, and they'll have to hope that neither driver does anything like that again. When you've got Takuma Sato on your driving strength, it's always a little of a concern. I do rate Takuma, but he has had his incidents this year.
He's been finding the limits, as they say.
Well, let's hope he keeps it in one piece in qualifying this afternoon. Otherwise, they're going to be up against it to have 2 cars ready for the Grand Prix tomorrow. Meanwhile, down in the Minardi pit, Alex Young still working on trying to make sure he qualifies here today. He's done a 1:17.2 so far,
and that's a massive improvement on his time this morning, which is a 1:18.2, I think. And so things are moving forward for the birthday boy, but will they be enough?
Well, we'll find out in not too long a time as we approach that qualifying session this afternoon, as Fisichella's car brought back into the pit lane, and the Jordan team will now have an opportunity to have a good look at it, see what the damage is, make sure if the monocoque's okay, and hopefully be able to rebuild it into a usable car for tomorrow in the warm-up and as a spare perhaps for the Grand Prix itself. And that's the shredded remains of what was an immaculate-looking Jordan Formula 1 car until just a little while ago.
One thing we haven't mentioned too much is Jenson Button up there in 4th position at the moment. The other positions kind of expected from yesterday, but Jenson definitely moving forward.
That's a good effort. Yeah, he's in the 1 minute 13s, 1 minute 13.928, so ahead of Coulthard at the moment, and truly also popped up towards the latter part before we had the red flag, because he got up to 6th. So both Renaults in the top 6 at the moment, and that's definitely an improvement from what we saw yesterday. Maybe we'll see something a bit special from them in qualifying this afternoon, and that announcement from Flavio Briatore about the drivers coming up later on today, well, after qualifying's finished. But of course, we'll bring you all the updates on that with our coverage of the warm-up starting on Sunday morning. Everybody desperate to get in there with the cameras, Jonathan, and the team just as desperate to get it covered up.
Yeah, they want to get that covered up, as Gary says, dustbin job or car boot sale for Eddie. That car's going nowhere, and I don't think there's much retrievable from that at all. It's always interesting for the snappers there to get something, get a good look at that car.
Yeah, radiator you can see on the left-hand side there, looking very mangled. That's as a result of the impact. That one's certainly a bin job. We're going to get much out of that. And of course, you may well have damaged not only the exhaust pipes, but even the engine itself. When a hit like that can actually damage the block of the engine, so they'll have to strip it all down and have a very good look. And it's likely, in fact, that engine will be sent off for rebuild now, having gone through an incident like that. They wouldn't want to run it in case of some sort of damage being done internally. So they've actually got a... That was the car being brought out. I just wanted it to look like they had a stretcher there as well.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? Cameras were looking through the... we couldn't tell who it was, obviously, but...
whether that is Giancarlo, although he looked perfectly okay when he went into the medical centre. Perhaps he's got a bit of a sore neck, and of course with any kind of neck injury at all, they will always be very, very cautious, and it may be that they want to take him off for some x-rays. We'll have to wait and see.
The session will restart at 11:05.
He was rubbing his hand a little bit. Maybe, as I said, he didn't actually, as I said, big impact, and I was wondering what he was going to do with his hands, because obviously that is one of the last things to think about when you're trying to control the car.
That's right, yeah. So, well, let's hope Giancarlo's okay. I'm sure the team will let us know once they get some information. And the restart will be at 5 past. That's in just over 3 minutes' time. We will get this session underway once again, and it'll run for the last 20 minutes or so.